It had been a tough year for Tracey McMann. Just 12 months ago, everything was fine. But when she turned 30, life's responsibilities started to feel too much. She missed her days as a student and her hometown, Grants Pass. She didn't like living in San Francisco. Actually, it wasn't the city itself that she hated, but the life she had there. When her dad, Travis McMann, died 5 years ago, Tracey was heartbroken. She had lost her mother to cancer when she was just 5 years old. After her father's death from a heart attack, she felt alone. Without her Uncle Tanner, Tracey would have been completely lost. Travis was a rich man. His money came from the company he and Tanner had started over 30 years ago. It was a strange company because it didn't have just one main job. Instead, they bought small, independent businesses that offered special services to customers. They would either run these businesses or let other people run them for a fee. They owned car repair shops, fast food places, paint shops, and many other different types of businesses. Because they were very smart, the brothers made hundreds of millions of dollars each year from this mix of businesses. After Travis died, Tanner had to run the entire company on his own. Tanner liked working on the ground and hated the business side of things. He agreed to take over only until Tracey turned 30, when she would then take his place and Tanner could retire. He was a tough man and wouldn't be missed much. Tracey was in her 4th year of getting her Master of Fine Arts at the University of Oregon when she got the news. All she wanted to do was paint and draw. She loved art and never ran out of creative ideas. Even though she owned 26% of McMann Enterprise, she mainly lived off the interest from a $28 million fund her father had set up for her. She had no trouble living on $12,000 a month. In fact, just like her father, she saved more than half of her income each month. She didn't need or want the trouble of running a business, especially one that was forced on her. McMann Enterprises rented the 10th floor of the Bank of America building. Most of the work involved paperwork, which meant computers and people to use them. As the CEO, Tracey oversaw a board of 8 members. These 8 members made almost all the decisions for the company. Tracey's job was to approve what they decided. The company worked fine until a few months ago. The board had 7 men and 1 woman. Andrea Stiles was in charge of the personnel department but seemed more interested in Tracey than her job. Tracey was flattered but wanted Andrea to focus more on work. Todd Werner, younger than Tracey, managed the computers for the main office and other business spots. Tracey liked Todd and felt he was the only one she could trust. Todd had no special interest in Tracey, and she liked that too. The other 6 board members were older men who had been there forever. They didn't hide the fact that they resented Tracey for being the chairperson. They believed they were better suited for the job. Their unofficial leader was Darian Tremble. Tracey didn't understand how Andrea fit in with the old guys, but she knew Todd wasn't part of their group. Weekends were the only thing that kept her balanced. She spent her free time in Oregon doing outdoor activities like mountain biking, rock climbing, and parkour. She went on a few dates and had some casual relationships, but nothing serious. In San Francisco, exercising was harder to fit into her schedule. Urban parkour was tougher than she was used to, but it kept her in shape. 3 blocks from her office was the Heritage Bike Shop, run by Tiny Morgan. Tracey visited one day when she was really bored at work. It was a big place with property prices sky high in the area. Most of the bikes were old Harleys and Indians. There was a Vincent Black Shadow next to an Ariel Square 4 and some old BMWs. It felt like a museum. Tracey had learned to ride years ago on a Honda Rebel 250, so she liked the smaller bikes in the shop. Most people wanted the bigger machines, but Tracey thought the 883 Sportsters were just right. A week later, a nice black Harley was parked next to her 1980 RX-7 in the condo basement. She rarely used the Mazda, preferring to take cabs or cable cars in the city. She rode her bike every weekend. Tracey rented the condo because it was close to Japantown and only a block from the cable car line. She could get all the sushi she wanted and had easy transportation to and from work. The area around Japantown was perfect for her parkour. She always got up early, worked out, and then took a shower before heading to work. As she stood in front of the mirror drying her hair, she made a mental note to consider changing her hairstyle. Long blonde hair was attractive, but it was hard to keep looking good. Because she wasn't looking for a relationship, Getting a short, boyish bob haircut seemed like the right choice. She was nearly 6 feet tall, mostly legs. The biking and running kept her lean with no extra fat. She needed a good place in the countryside to run and do parkour. She missed Oregon. Once her hair dried, things went fast. Looking good naturally made it easy to keep a natural look. Cotton sports underwear was always comfy. There wasn't any silk, nylon, or lace in her drawer. She finished a glass of orange juice and half a honeydew melon before leaving her apartment. She skipped the first floor and went straight to the basement garage to check on an oil leak in her bike before heading to work. It was still dripping, so she knew she'd need to visit the shop by the end of the week. 5 minutes later, she was riding down California Street towards the cable car. As she stepped off the cable car, Todd Warner grabbed her arm. "This way, hurry, come on, Miss McMann, move it." It was clear Todd had something serious on his mind. She decided to follow him and see what was urgent. Todd was usually calm and serious, so this was out of character. The Stardust coffee shop was crowded at the counter, but the back was empty. Most of the early customers were grabbing their coffee to go. "Okay, are we safe now? Want to tell me what's going on, Todd?" "It's Tremble. He got a legal order or something to have you removed as chairman of the board. He and his pals have enough stock now to outvote you and take over the company. They've got legal papers saying you're not fit to run the company. There are people waiting at each of the 4 main doors and the parking garage entrance to serve you. They were even at your home this morning. How did you dodge them?" "I went out through the back garage. What happens when they give me the papers?" "That means you've been officially notified. You'd have to go to court and spend years and lots of money to fight it. By then it will be too late." "Too late for what?" "They plan to sell the company off in pieces. Some of the board members want to take over parts of it. I think Tremble is planning to keep all the transmission shops." "How much stock do they have?" "I'm not sure, but I heard 31% mentioned a few times." "They are probably right, Todd. I'm not really qualified to run the company. I thought they'd keep running it and I'd just stay on as a figurehead. I didn't expect them to betray me. Maybe you don't have the experience to run the company, but you're fair and honest. I can't say that about them. What happens if they don't serve me the papers?" "You're still in charge, even if you're not there. They can't kick you out until they serve you." "Will that stop them from breaking up the company?" "I'm not a corporate lawyer, but I think so. Find a lawyer who can draw up papers to protect the company. Do it as soon as possible. Give me your cell number. I'll call you and tell you where to bring the papers so I can sign them. Put all major decisions on hold until I get back. Can we do that?" "Damn it, Tracey. I'm not a lawyer. I can only try." Todd had never used her first name before. Given the situation, she didn't mind. He gave her his business card with his cell number on the back. "Do you have any cash, Todd?" "About $300. Todd handed her the money, and she thanked him quickly. Todd left through the front door, and Tracey went out the back. The Heritage bike shop wasn't open yet, but Tracey knew Tiny, the owner, slept there. After a few minutes of knocking, Tiny opened the door. He was greeted with a large cup of straight black coffee. "What are you doing here at this hour?" "I need a big favor, Tiny." "Have I ever said no to you?" "I can't go home. I need to borrow a Sportster, a 1200 if you have it. I need boots and leathers, too." "Wow, a beautiful lady in need. Help yourself to whatever you find here. I'll get a bike ready. Any color you prefer?" Tiny laughed a little at the situation. He knew Tracey's position and wasn't worried about being paid back. Being in her good books had its perks. From across the room, Tiny called out, "A destination might help me decide. Can you give me one? Have you heard of Rough and Ready? Been there, done that. Will that help? At this time of year, you need long johns under the leathers and good gloves. I think I have a bike with a half windshield. Don't forget the long johns." Given the situation, modesty didn't matter. Tracey put on the quilted long johns right in the showroom. She found some leathers that fit a bit loose but were comfortable for a long ride. She picked her boots the same way, along with heavy wool socks. Tiny wheeled a red Sportster with a half windshield across the floor. "This is the best I've got now. Your legs might get a little cold, but the top will be fine. You might prefer one of the gold wings over there." "No thanks, this is perfect." "Can you help me pick out a jacket and some gloves? Why do I need all this stuff anyway?" "Your timing isn't great, lady. There's a big snowstorm coming over the Sierras today. By tonight, it will reach the lower hills. You'll be okay until you pass Sacramento, but after that, who knows?" Grass Valley and Nevada City often get snowed in, and Rough and Ready is close by. Are you sure you don't want to go somewhere else? Sorry, Tiny, but that's where I have to go. How about taking a car or truck? I can lend you mine. That's no fun, is it? Tiny gave simple directions. He said to go to Auburn and turn north. The first couple of hours were fine. She stopped for lunch in Sacramento. The long underwear seemed too much at this point. The highway speed cooled her down, but she was still warm. The gloves and goggles were safe in her pockets and looked unnecessary. Tom Henderson had just finished tying his ex-wife's old piano to the trailer. Things were tight, and selling the piano would help a lot. Not much else left to sell after this. Let's go, boys. We need to leave if we're going to beat the storm. Two young boys came out of the house. The place was beautiful, but the house itself was not. You could call it a cabin in the mountains, but it was really a shack in the woods. The best part was it had no mortgage. Bradley was 16 and his brother Greg was 13. School had let out early because of the coming storm. It didn't seem too bad now, but storms are hard to predict. After we deliver this, we can stop for dinner at the pit. The Jeep Cherokee had no trouble pulling the trailer, but the piano made it wobbly on the gravel road. Tom went slow until he hit the paved road. The drive from Nevada City to Roseville wasn't long, but he didn't want to risk losing the piano now that it was sold. Tom had finished 3 new stories for his children's book series, but they had no pictures yet. His publisher wouldn't give him more money until the pictures were done. All the artists he contacted wanted payment first. That wasn't possible. Tom's wife, Anne, used to do the drawings, but she left him, leaving him in a tough spot. Their only income came from Tom's writing. Luckily, he still earned money from his earlier books. 2 years had passed since Anne left. She left only a note and later sent divorce papers from Reno. The note said she had found someone else, an airman from Beale Air Force Base, and she was leaving with him. The divorce papers stated he was no longer married. Tom had suspected something for almost a year but hoped it wasn't true. It was hard to explain to the boys since he didn't know why it happened. Husbands are often the last to know. The $600 from the piano sale would buy a month's worth of food and pay off the back utility bills. Everything else would have to wait. Tom was relieved when the piano was finally in its new home. He couldn't have done it without the boys' help. Snow was coming down in big, wet flakes by the time they reached Auburn. He was glad to leave the interstate because the empty trailer bounced around at high speeds. They could have gone straight home, but he had promised the boys dinner at the pit. The pit was special because the New York steaks were expensive. Bradley and Greg enjoyed cooking their steaks over an open fire. It was worth the extra money to Tom. When the meat was perfectly cooked, they ate by the front window. They watched the snow get heavier and the wind stronger. Greg was the first to see the motorcycle appear from the white snow and pull up to the building. The bike and rider were covered in frozen snow. 2 minutes later, they watched as the rider removed her helmet, revealing shoulder-length blonde hair. She stood in the doorway, dripping snow, as the hostess handed her a towel. Bradley and Greg thought it was the coolest thing they had ever seen. Tom just saw someone who needed a hot cup of coffee. A few minutes later, she had coffee and a hamburger. Even after brushing off most of the snow, she was still dripping water. Her cheeks were red from the cold, despite wearing a full-face helmet. "What's wrong, Bradley?" She just smiled at me. "Yeah, right. In your dreams," Greg said, not believing his brother. "Were you staring at her?" Bradley shifted in his seat. "It's hard not to. She's really pretty." "Well, try to be polite. Staring is rude." Tom understood what his son felt. He had taken a few glances at her himself. She was very attractive, as Bradley had said. The kind of person boys dream about before falling asleep. The kind a middle-aged man knows he'll never be with. Maybe it was the leather outfit that made her stand out. The snow seemed to be getting worse. Soon, Tom and the boys would have to brace themselves and drive the last 20 miles home. The 4-wheel drive would help, but the ride would still be rough. They all agreed to have dessert, but before they could finish, someone interrupted them. "Excuse me, the waitress said the trailer outside is yours." A tall blonde woman in leather stood at their table. They hadn't seen her coming. Tom was a bit nervous, but he managed to say yes. "I need help. I have to get to a motel for the night, but I'm too tired to ride my bike any further. I saw your trailer is empty and hoped you could give me a ride to the nearest motel. The bike isn't mine, and I don't want to leave it here." We're headed to Grass Valley. There are 2 motels there. We can drop you off. Thank you so much. By the way, I already paid your bill. What if we had said no? You wouldn't. The boys grinned. We can load it for you. Bradley held out his hand, and the woman handed him the keys. Secure it well, guys. Use all the bungee cords and tie-downs. Tom knew they didn't need instructions. They'd loaded their dirt bikes many times before. The only difference was that this Harley was a lot heavier. She sat across from Tom. My name is Tracey. I chose a bad time to visit my uncle. She held out her hand, which Tom thought was unusual for a woman. Tom Henderson. The older boy is Bradley, and the younger one is Greg. Sorry if Bradley was staring earlier. It's fine. I thought I saw you looking too. You were quite a sight with all that snow and ice. Sorry if I made you feel awkward. Not at all. It actually helped me get your assistance. I'm a bit crafty like that. Tom laughed at her boldness. The waitress brought 2 coffees, and they watched the boys load the bike onto the trailer as if they had done it many times. The trailer was made for dirt bikes and ATVs, so securing the Harley was easy. 10 minutes later, the boys came in, and Bradley handed Tracey the keys. He seemed proud, and she noticed. Bradley, go warm up the Jeep so we can leave. By the time Tom and Tracey got to the car, Greg had cleared the snow from the windows, and the inside was warming up. Tracey quickly checked the bike's tie-downs before sitting in the front seat. She placed her helmet, with the goggles and gloves inside, on her lap. The roads in this area were usually clear, so no snowplows were around. By noon tomorrow, most of the snow would be gone, except in shaded areas. Tom drove carefully and avoided braking as much as possible. As expected, both motels had no vacancy signs. Tom pulled over. The snow was falling slower, but the flakes were bigger. Where were you trying to go? My uncle lives in Rough and Ready. I don't know exactly where, and I'm not even sure he's home. I don't have his phone number. I hoped someone there could help me find him. Rough and Ready is about 4 miles west of here. Our place is 4 miles east in Nevada City. Given the situation, it's better if you come with us. We have lots of room, and you would be welcome. Tomorrow or the next day, we can help you find your uncle. Are you sure I wouldn't be a bother? Won't your wife mind? No wife to worry about, and I think we have some dry clothes for you. Tom noticed his sons were smiling. Then he realized he was smiling too, and so was Tracey. 10 minutes later, Tracey watched Tom make coffee in his cozy cabin. She tried to clean up a bit without making a mess on the large knitted rug. Her socks were wet, so she took them off and placed them near her boots by the door. By then, Tom had the fire going again, and small flames were rising. She moved closer to feel the warmth. The silence between them was just noticeable when the door burst open. Your bike is in the shed. Bradley seemed proud. He wanted to say more, but couldn't think of anything. Tracey found his nervousness amusing. The boys took off their jackets and left their boots by the door before coming to the fireplace. I've got some milk warming for Coco. Why don't you find some dry clothes for our guest? There should be some sweats or something in the green trunk in the attic. It was the first thing Tom had said since they entered the cabin. Find some slippers or warm socks, too. The boys jumped up and raced to the storage area off the master bedroom. What would you like first? Hot coffee or a hot shower? The shower for sure. I'll enjoy the coffee more after warming up. The shower was hot, and Tracey enjoyed it much longer than usual. The last part of her trip was tough, and she was just starting to feel it. The hot water made everything better. When she stepped out, she saw her clothes were gone and replaced with olive green sweats and wool socks. On top of a big towel was a simple hair dryer. Tracey felt bad for taking so long in the bathroom, but her hair took forever to dry. She was thankful they hadn't offered any used underwear along with the other items. The sweatpants were a bit short, but they worked. Bradley and Greg insisted that Tracey sit on the couch between them. Tom handed her a mug of fresh coffee before she even got settled. Your clothes are in the washer. They should be dry in about an hour. Sorry for taking them while you were in the bathroom, but it seemed like the best thing to do. I didn't know what to do with the leather stuff, so I hung it over some chairs. For the next 2 hours, Bradley and Greg bombarded Tracey with questions. Where did she come from? Where was she going? Was she married? How long would she stay? How old was she? Why wasn't she married? The questions seemed endless but fun, like a game of 20 questions. Tracey asked a few questions herself, mostly about the boys, but also about their father. She avoided asking about their mother. Tom sat on the side, watching but not joining in. "All right, boys, that's enough. Get ready for bed and let the lady rest." Reluctantly, the boys left the room. "Just one more question. How do you like your eggs?" Bradley smiled brightly. "I usually have fruit for breakfast, but scrambled eggs are fine if that's what you have." With the boys gone, the room felt more relaxed. Tom took Tracey's empty cup. "This is the last of it. Should I make more?" "No, thank you. I've had plenty, and I think I'm ready for bed, too." The dryer had long finished its job, so Tom neatly folded the clean clothes, cotton underclothes, long johns, and socks, and placed them beside her on the couch. "We can find more suitable clothes in the morning. It's my wife's old stuff, but some of it should fit you if you don't mind used clothes." "I take it from the sweatpants that she wasn't very tall." Tom smiled at her remark and led her down the short hallway to the master bedroom. "I'll take the sofa. You get the bed after that ride." Tracey didn't argue. She smiled, said, "Good night," and closed the door. Waking up in a strange house always feels odd. Tracey felt the cold and dampness as she got out of bed. A musty smell lingered from the fire that had died out during the night. The welcoming aroma of freshly brewed coffee quickly replaced the musty smell. As she entered the living room, she noticed a new fire starting on top of the dead coals in the fireplace. She also saw the smiling faces of the three men at the pine kitchen table. She felt a bit shy, but also pleased by the attention. Tom placed a mug of coffee in front of her as Bradley set down half a cantaloupe at her designated seat. "Good morning," they all said in unison. Tracey smiled and nodded. "The melon is nice. I wasn't expecting it." Bradley got up early and went to the market to get it. He also got a honeydew just in case. Tom looked a little different this morning. His beard was gone, and he wore a freshly ironed flannel shirt. "I didn't think the stores would be open so early," Bradley chimed in proudly. "They weren't, but I went with the milk delivery man. Mr. Springer let me have the melons when I told him it was a special occasion." "That was clever, and I appreciate it." "I cleaned your Harley. I got all the dirt out and blew it clean with the air gun. It's ready to go if you need it," Greg added, happy to contribute. Tracey was just starting her breakfast when the school bus honked. The boys grabbed their bags, and as they headed out the door, Bradley turned. "You'll be here when we get home, right?" She just smiled and nodded yes. After the boys left, Tracey and Tom sat in silence. Tom ate an English muffin with honey. Tracey smiled to herself, amused by Tom's slight discomfort. She didn't want to seem pushy, but felt she should say something to make him feel better. "You mentioned you might have some other clothes for me? I'm not too eager to put that leather stuff back on." "No problem. I hope you don't mind wearing used clothes. They belong to my wife. Some might fit, but she was shorter than you. I washed everything before putting it away, so it's all clean." There was a storage room off the master bedroom. It was unheated but dry. Tom showed her two large trunks and left her to search through them. 20 minutes later, Tracey had an armful of clothes she could use. Tom seemed pleased she found anything at all. She still needed some practical shoes that fit. The snow was starting to melt. In a couple of hours, only small patches in the shaded areas would be left. "Tracey, I don't know your last name, and I don't feel right calling you by your first name without knowing you better. What do you prefer?" "Tracey is fine. My last name is McMann." "Okay, Tracey it is." I answered to Tom. "Tom, I really appreciate all you and the guys have done, but I need to move on now. I'll return these clothes as soon as I can. Right now I need to find a place to stay." "We can take the Jeep downtown and see what's available. We can also get you some shoes." Tom didn't really want her to leave. Anne's clothes fit Tracey just enough to be decent, but they didn't really suit her. Even though she looked a bit like a bag lady, Tom still thought she was pretty cute. Cute felt like the right word. If he thought of her as beautiful, he'd be too nervous to talk to her. She had to be cute for now. The sun was bright, and the sky clear as they walked to the car. It was a big change from the previous day. The bell-bottom jeans were a bit short, but since the waist was loose, it balanced out. The sweater covered her midsection, which she preferred. There was nothing wrong with her torso, but she felt better not showing it off. She was looking forward to getting new shoes. It was a short drive to town. "Are you sure you wouldn't be better off staying with us? The boys and I enjoy having you around." Tracey felt at home with the Hendersons, but staying longer could get complicated. She smiled at Tom's offer as she thought of a way to politely say no. The problem was, she wasn't really sure she wanted to say no. "I'll make a deal. If I can't find my uncle or he's not around, I'll think about staying with you a bit longer." They were quiet for a few minutes. "I might take a while picking up some things. Could you drive down to Rough and Ready and see if anyone knows where Tanner might be? Do you have an address or phone number?" "I only know his name, Tanner McMann, and that he's somewhere in the Rough and Ready area." "Oh, look, Tom, can you drop me off there?" The building was old, but the sign out front was new. Sierra Outfitters was exactly what Tracey needed. "Are you sure? The boys and I checked it out when it opened. They have good stuff, but it's expensive. Some guy from San Francisco took over the building about 6 months ago." As she jumped out of the Jeep, Tom waved and shouted, "I'll be back in about an hour, okay? Make it 2. The store was perfect. It was like Cabela's mixed with Land's End. Tracey felt at home. The selection was small, but exactly what she needed. "Good morning. Can I help you?" Tracey could tell this guy was from San Francisco. She wasn't one to stereotype, but this was obvious and a nice surprise. She wouldn't have to deal with someone who looked down on her. "I think I need a cart." "Hi, I'm Lance, and I'll be your personal cart." He held out his arms and smiled, but not in a snarky way. She liked Lance, but doubted it was his real name. Nobody names their kid Lance. "Okay, let's get started. First, I need some parkour shoes. I have a nice selection of Ariakis on the side wall. I'm sure we'll find something that works for you." That was the start of a fun shopping spree. By the time 2 hours passed, Tracey had a big pile of items. She had a complete wardrobe and some extras she couldn't resist. During that time, she got Lance to admit his real name was Brian. He moved from the city when his mom had a stroke. Brian's partner, a practical nurse, was helping take care of her while Brian ran the store. He missed his old life, but was glad to be home. The bill was over $4,000. Good stuff costs money. Tracey pulled out her American Express card, but stopped. If someone was looking for her, they could track her card usage. She hesitated before handing it over. "Is there a problem, Miss McMann?" "You know who I am? Why didn't you say something?" "I didn't think it was needed or appropriate. If there's something wrong, I'd be glad to help." The offer to help was appreciated, but Tracey didn't know what kind of help she needed. She noticed Tom parking the Jeep and quickly looked for a solution. Before she could speak, Brian said, "You don't have to pay now. Take the things and pay me when it's convenient." "Are you sure? Miss McMann, I trust you." "Are you almost done?" Tom asked with a smile, looking at the large pile of packages. "Would you mind taking these to the car while I pay for them?" "No problem." Tom grabbed an armload, but it would take several trips. When he was out of earshot, Tracey wrote a number on a piece of paper for Brian. "Call this guy in San Francisco and have him bring you $10,000 in cash as soon as possible. I'll pick it up here. Don't mention my name. Please don't tell anyone you saw me." Brian was intrigued, but flattered that Tracey trusted him. As she picked up some bundles, Brian handed her a business card. "I'm not trying to get into your business, but if you're trying to stay under the radar, I suggest a new hairstyle and dye job." The card was for a nearby beauty shop. "Your privacy is safe with me," he assured. Tracey gave him a silent thank you with a nod as she and Tom carried the last of their bags out. "I'm sorry. I got caught up in it. Your wife's clothes were nice, but these will fit better and won't remind you of her." Tom discovered where Tanner McMann lived. Tanner was on a week-long trip to Mount Shasta for fishing. He loved the mountains and enjoyed catching brook trout. Tom got this info from the housekeeper, though he wasn't sure if she was telling the truth. After grabbing some burgers, they drove to Rough and Ready so Tracey could see for herself. Tom parked on a quiet road. About 100 yards away, up a hill, stood a big stone lodge partly hidden by pine trees. The gravel driveway up the hill was overgrown. It wasn't exactly welcoming, but it wasn't shut to the world either. As they walked closer, the house seemed even bigger. It was much larger than what one old man needed. Tracey smiled, finding it opposite of what she knew about Uncle Tanner. It was a lovely home. Before they reached the front porch, the door opened. A middle-aged woman came out wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, looking out of place with her gray hair and sturdy frame. "My goodness, it's Tracey McMann. Tanner will be so happy to see you." Tracey didn't know this woman and was still figuring it out while they were led into the main room. "My friend said Tanner isn't here. Do you know when he will be back? Sit. Would you like something to drink?" The furniture was all made of pine logs with colorful cushions. Indian blankets hung on the walls like art. It felt like a movie set, very Tanner-like. Both Tracey and Tom shook their heads to decline the drink. "Sorry, I didn't introduce myself. I am Sarah Weiser. I guess you could say I'm Tanner's life partner." "Life partner?" Sarah laughed and looked a bit embarrassed at Tracey's curiosity. "It's a long story. I cook, clean, do laundry, and keep him company in exchange for a place to stay." Tracey quickly understood and found it amusing. She was happy for Tanner and his new friend. "He talks about you all the time and shows off your pictures." Tracey felt a bit embarrassed, especially since Tom heard the comment. "Tanner left 4 days ago for fishing. He should be back soon." "Up at Mount Shasta?" "No, near Paxton. I say Mount Shasta because no one knows Paxton. Sorry." Sarah winked at Tom, who seemed to blush. "I assume he doesn't take a cell phone? You know him well. Leave me your number and I'll have him call you when he's back. Are you staying nearby?" Tracey wrote her cell number on a pad. Then she handed it to Tom. "Maybe your house number too?" She turned to Sarah. "I'll be staying with Mr. Henderson for a few days in Nevada City, so I'll be close." They all stood to leave, as if on cue. "I hope you and Mr. Henderson can join us for dinner when Tanner returns." "Sure, Sarah. We'd love to." Walking back to the Jeep, Tom was smiling. "What's funny, Mr. Tom?" "Nothing much. It's just when you made it sound like we were a couple. I thought that was cute." He was right, but she had no reply for that. "I'm glad you decided to stay, by the way." Nearly back to Grass Valley, Tracey pulled out a card Brian had given her. "Can you drop me at the Triple Cut? It's near where I got my clothes." "I know the place. How long will you be?" "A couple of hours. Can I call you?" "Bradley will be home from school. I'll send him to pick you up. He'll like that." Bradley and Greg were waiting outside the Triple Cut when Tracey came out. At first, they didn't recognize her. It wasn't the new clothes, but the short haircut with a hint of red. She jumped into the front seat and buckled up. "Do you like my new look?" Greg was silent, and Bradley seemed lost for words. "Before, you looked sort of stylish. Now you look more like a mom." "Is that good?" Greg finally spoke. "You look like a cool mom." "Thanks, not what I aimed for, but thanks." The roads were clean and dry on the ride back, but the ground was still mushy and slippery. Any outdoor activities would have to wait. Tracey hadn't spent much time with kids and didn't know how to start a conversation. She usually did well in social situations, but this was different. Tom Henderson was beside the cabin splitting wood. Piles of logs on one side and neatly stacked wood on the other. The three of them walked onto the porch. Bradley noticed Tracey's interest. "He's been like that since Mom left." "What do you mean?" She was curious about Tom's wife. "He has OCD, Greg said as he entered the cabin. Tracey and Bradley sat on the porch steps. "Greg and I used to split and stack all the firewood. One day after Mom left, Dad told us he would handle everything from now on. All we had to do was make sure there was dry wood by the fireplace. Some days he stays outside until it's dark, chopping wood. He doesn't even come inside for dinner. At first his hands got really bad blisters, but now they are tough and rough. He never seems to get tired. That's a lot of wood. There's 10 times more behind the cabin. We have enough wood to last 5 years, but he keeps going. We struggle to pay bills sometimes, but he still gets more truckloads of logs delivered." That's a lot of anger. She saw a connection between the chopped wood and Tom's anger towards his wife. Tom saw Bradley and Tracey sitting on the porch. He had a good rhythm going and didn't want to stop, but he thought it might be better to hide his obsession. He hoped it wasn't too late. Nice haircut. She felt happy because he seemed sincere. It wasn't what she was looking for, but she appreciated it. "I'll start the chili." Bradley seemed eager to leave Tracey and his dad alone. "He does most of the cooking. It's not very good, but it fills us up. I've been here just a day and 2 people already recognized me. I thought I needed to change how I look a bit." "I don't want to be nosy, but why did you have to do that?" At this point, Tracey felt it was okay to share a bit of her problem. There were some bad people trying to take over my dad's company. To do that, they needed to serve me with some legal papers. I came here for 2 reasons: to avoid them and to get my Uncle Tanner to help me. He helped start the company with my dad years ago, so I guess you could say I'm hiding out. Sounds interesting. Must be nice to have a little thrill in your life. Tom? Yes? You smell bad. You should take a shower before supper. He laughed. You're right. I promise to smell better by supper time. While Tom showered, Tracey took off all the tags from her new clothes. He had emptied out a whole dresser for her, more than she needed. There was a new toothbrush and hairbrush on top of the dresser. She felt welcome. The best part of the evening came after supper from Greg. You said last night that you were a trasseuse. I couldn't find it in the dictionary. What is it? It's French. Do you have a computer? Yeah. Look it up on the computer and tell me what it is. Tracey and Tom were alone quickly as the boys rushed to the computer. Wow, you're like a sneaky school teacher. That's not what Greg called me earlier. Should I worry about what my son said? No, of course not. He said I looked like a cool mom when I came from the hairdresser. Well, I apologize. You aren't old enough to be a mom. You rascal. That's not what you should apologize for. Sorry, but that's the best I can do if you want honesty. Things were quiet for a few moments. Tom filled the coffee cups and noticed Tracey was smiling. I know it's not my place, but can you tell me something about your wife? Tom said nothing. It was clear from his face and body that he didn't want to talk about it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to bring up a bad memory. I won't mention it again. The silence felt awkward. That's okay. It's hard for me to talk about. Anne left 2 years ago without a word. I had suspected something for a while, but never knew for sure. She left with a sergeant from Beale Air Force Base near Marysville. I don't know how they met. 6 months later, I got a notice that she had divorced me in Nevada. It was final, and I didn't even know it was happening. She didn't ask for anything, at least. I never had a chance to fight it. It hurt me in 3 ways. She left the kids, she embarrassed me, and she took away part of our income. I write children's books. Anne used to do all the drawings for the stories. Now I take out my anger on the poor logs in the backyard every day. Have you heard from her since? She sends birthday cards to the boys, usually with $10 inside, that's all. I don't know where she is now. Do you think she'll come back? God, I hope not. Tom started to pick up the coffee cups just as the boys came back. Can you teach us? Can you show us how to do parkour? Greg seemed more excited than Bradley, but both were interested. Tracey was impressed. Did you find a list of the moves? Bradley held up the printed sheet. Tracey stood up. Tom, the boys and I need to talk for a few minutes. Could you make some fresh coffee? Tom smiled. Making her happy was his top priority. Tracey sat on one of the bunk beds facing her 2 eager students. Tonight, study all the moves. Tomorrow after school, go to Sierra Outfitters and look for Brian. Ask him for shoes and gloves. Tell him to put it on my bill. Don't tell your dad. Once you have the right gear, we can start. Her words were met with a serious silence. She looked at them with confusion. What? I'm sorry, but Greg and I won't do anything without telling our dad. We'll get the shoes and gloves, but we won't keep it a secret. It all made sense. Trust kept the family together since their mother left. Without trust, there was no family. My bad. I wasn't trying to be sneaky. I just thought he might not like the idea of me buying something like that for you. I didn't want it to seem like charity. We can do it if he says it's okay. Tracey's embarrassment was interrupted by a voice from the doorway. It's all right, guys. I think it would be fine if Miss McMann got some equipment for you. Of course, I expect her to stay until you both learn how to use it properly. Tracey was amazed at how easily Tom had calmed a tense situation. She knew now that he wanted her to stay, and she wasn't unhappy about that. She felt comfortable here. She felt comfortable with Tom. The boys high-fived each other as Tracey left the room with a big smile. Well, that was embarrassing. I apologize for trying to get your sons to do something behind your back. I assure you it will never happen again. Don't worry too much about it. Sometimes keeping a little secret can be fun, though this wasn't one of those times. Are you mad at me? Absolutely not. I'm glad you care enough to help them. They need something like that. We are slowly turning into a pretty gloomy group. And what can I do to brighten your day? Tom handed her a steaming cup. "Let me keep making coffee for you and pay you back for the shoes and gloves." Tom and Tracey both put their feet up on the coffee table at the same time and laughed. The next few moments of warm silence were finally broken when Tom asked if she wanted to watch a movie. They both fell asleep on the couch before it was over. It had been a busy day. Tracey was awakened by the giggles of the two boys in the kitchen. Somehow, she and Tom had ended up side by side on the couch. With a sheepish grin, she got up and made her way to the bathroom. She noticed the glee from the kitchen as she left and realized she was also smiling. Tom was helping the boys when she returned, and he had a playful look on his face. He smiled, but didn't say anything. A few minutes later, the school bus horn was blowing. It was going to be another busy day in the foothills. Tracey noticed that she and Tom worked well together in the house. The morning routine and chores were done without any awkwardness. They moved around like they had been doing this for years, even though it was only the second day. The new clothes were a blessing. She carefully put the leathers and boots away in case she needed them later. Tom seemed a little sad when Tracey left the house for a run. He watched as she started down the road, as if he was worried she wouldn't come back. She glanced back and smiled to herself. She would be back, and he would be smiling again. After running for a while, she cut off into the woods. The rocks were just what she was looking for, but the ground was still mushy from the melting snow. It would be a day or two before she could bring the boys out. Today, she could scout out some good training spots and get a little workout herself. The rocks were dry enough that she found a few great places to do different types of vaults. In 20 minutes, she was ready to head back to the house without returning to the road. It was a great place to work out. While she was heading back, she wondered who owned this land. It was too rough to build on, but she liked it. Tom was splitting wood again when he saw her come out of the woods at the back of the property. Tracey slowed to a walk as she crossed the clearing. He had his shirt off, and she noticed how strong his forearms looked. She wondered if the constant exercise had built up his heart and lungs as well as his muscles. "I hope to go downtown for lunch, Mr. Henderson, but it looks like we both need showers now. I don't know which of us is sweating more." Tom set down the axe and sat on his chopping stump. We could save time by showering together. It was the first time he had made a joking remark like that. Tracey was hoping he would loosen up a bit so she wasn't upset. "If we did that, I'm afraid we'd never get to town." She started towards the house, then turned with a little smile. "Thanks for the offer, though." Tracey was just finishing her shower when she heard the phone ring. A few moments later, Tom knocked lightly on the door. "Tracey, Sarah Weiser is on the phone. Do you want to take it or call her back?" She didn't bother answering, but just opened the door with a towel wrapped around her. Her host had a hard time hiding his sheepish grin. She found she enjoyed teasing him, though she knew it was more like playful banter. "Hi, Sarah. Do you have good news for me? Your uncle is on his way home right now. He was hoping you and your friend could come for lunch. Any time between 12 and 1 would be fine." "My friend and I will be there if he doesn't take too much time in the shower." Tracey heard a slight laugh from Sarah at the other end. "Okay, we'll see you soon." Tracey clicked the phone off and smiled at Tom. "Hurry up and take your shower because we have a lunch date." She glanced down at his worn-out shoes. "Maybe you better make that a quick one." It was a nice lunch. Tanner made Tom feel comfortable, and Sarah was the perfect hostess. Tom and Tanner chatted about simple things, while Sarah and Tracey cleared the table. Then, as if planned, Sarah took Tom outside, and Tanner and Tracey went to the den. For the next hour, Tom got a complete tour of the McMann property. The property was much bigger than Tom expected, even including the land across the road. Sarah was fun to talk to and kept him engaged while Tanner and his niece worked through their business. Tom didn't feel left out. In fact, he was glad not to be involved in whatever had brought Tracey to his doorstep in the first place. Before long, Tracey and Tanner were back on the front porch. She and Tom thanked their hosts for lunch and then headed home. "You look happy." "I guess things went well with your uncle," Tom said. "Yes, everything went great. My dad was a better businessman than my uncle, but Tanner is tougher. If anyone can fix this mess, it's him." "You know, I have no idea what you're talking about," Tom replied. "I know, and I appreciate that. You've been very understanding, and I promise to thank you for your kindness." "Wow, I always wanted to get a reward," Tom joked. Tracey was pleased with how things were going with Tom. This wasn't what she had planned, but it was turning out to be a lot of fun. She wasn't in a hurry to go back to San Francisco. Tom, I need to stop by Sierra Outfitters and a grocery store on the way home. I promised the boys spaghetti for dinner. Brian smiled as Tracey walked into the shop. He reached under the counter and handed her a manila envelope. Your friend didn't stay long. I tried to get him to stay for dinner, but he said he had to go back to the city. He also thought someone might have followed him. Oh no, is that why he left so quickly? Yeah, he said he was going to drive around to lose them, but it could have been too late. Tracey opened the envelope and paid Brian what she owed, plus an extra amount to thank him and cover the boys' purchases. She told him to expect the boys later. He was happy for the extra business and money. Once home, it took Tracey about 10 minutes to get the sauce started for dinner. Tom, while the sauce is simmering, why don't you show me what you do, or used to do, for work? Tom seemed a bit hesitant, but showed her his workspace. He had a table where he wrote stories, and his late wife had used it to draw the pictures for his books. The drawings were simple, but matched the stories well. Tracey started thinking about how she could recreate the illustrations without losing their charm. She had all the materials she needed, and anything missing could be found nearby. The problem was how to suggest this to Tom without upsetting him. Would he be open to her help or get mad at the idea? Tom noticed Tracey was studying the drawings, not just looking at them. She seemed to know a lot about art, and he started to feel excited about her interest. You know something about art, don't you? He asked. It was an opportunity for Tracey. Yes, a little, she said, not wanting to give too much away. Everything you need is right here. If you want to try it out, I can leave you alone for a while. I have some wood to chop. Maybe I should read one of the books first. Tracey wanted to sit on the porch and read, but decided to stay inside. Tom's constant wood chopping outside was distracting. She needed to find a way to make him stop without directly addressing it. 30 minutes later, she went back to the workroom. She tried to ignore the sound of the axe as she practiced the skills needed to make good illustrations for the books. If she was to start drawing for his stories, the wood chopping had to stop. Hopefully, her work would be good enough for Tom and his publisher. Every 30 minutes, Tracey stirred the sauce. A little red wine made it taste better. The boys came in, all smiles, wearing their new shoes. They had put them on at the store and ran home. Tomorrow, she'd show them how to get the most out of them. She started boiling water for the pasta and stepped out onto the porch. You should take another shower if you want to enjoy my spaghetti, she said. She realized she sounded like a wife. This was new for her, but something she felt she could get used to. Tom smiled, picked up his shirt, and walked towards the house. He thought he could get to enjoy this. The evening got quiet after the boys went to bed. A cold bottle of wine that Tom brought out was slowly disappearing. As they both stared into the fire, Tracey spoke first. Tom, I need to understand why you chop wood all the time. I'm not prying, but it seems very important to you. I'm not sure. I can't afford professional help, and honestly, I don't think I need it. It's not a compulsion. The boys joke about it, but I think I can stop any time. I'm just really angry about what Anne did to us. That's all I think about when I'm swinging that axe. I don't want revenge, but some closure would be nice. Is there anything I can do to help? Tracey asked. Tom smiled at her as he thought about her question. Yesterday, I spent more time thinking about you than I did thinking about Anne. That's good, right? I don't know. Most of the time I was thinking about us taking a shower together. I might be replacing my anger with another feeling. Tracey laughed and had to put down her wine glass. Now you're trying to blame it on me. That's not fair. If I drink any more wine, I'll have to go outside and start splitting logs again. Okay, I get it. She took the glass from his hand, put it on the table, and walked to the bedroom. I hoped to do this when the boys weren't home, but you're being such a pain. We'll have to risk it now. They locked the bedroom door, but the cabin was still small. For the next hour, Tracey helped Tom release all the tension he had, and some of her own. It was exciting for them to stay quiet. Sometimes they had to muffle their sounds with pillows. Eventually, they both fell asleep. Saturday morning came with the smell of fresh coffee and bacon. Tom and Tracey woke up, realizing the boys probably knew what had happened. After getting themselves together, they came out to face the boys, who greeted them with smiles and glasses of fresh orange juice. Today, instead of fruit, Tracey had bacon and eggs for breakfast. The meal was quieter than usual. The adults felt a bit embarrassed, but the boys didn't seem to care. Greg finally spoke. "When can we go? We have everything ready. We remember all the moves. How soon can you be ready?" Tom and Tracey felt relieved. The boys were more excited about their Parker plans than how Tracey and Tom spent the night. It felt like the boys approved without saying it. 10 minutes later, Tom watched his sons and Tracey jog down the road. As they disappeared around a bend, he wondered if he wanted to take a shower or start splitting wood. The jog down the road was good for warming up. Without a word, Tracey suddenly turned right and started up the rocky hill. Bradley and Greg watched in awe as she jumped from rock to rock like a gazelle. She used her hands and feet to climb, like in a kung fu movie. They had watched all the YouTube videos but were amazed seeing it in person. "Are you two just going to watch? Get moving now?" Tracey smiled as she watched her students struggle with the new skills. It would take time, but they were eager and fit. She climbed down as easily as she went up. The boys quickly learned the importance of keeping their speed and being brave. Hesitation could cause accidents. They needed confidence. Some exercises required special obstacles, so today they could only practice the moves suitable for this area. After 2 hours of training, they were ready for a break. All three sat atop the biggest rock when they noticed an unexpected visitor. "Tracey McMann, I need to speak to you." He was halfway down the hill, looking up at them. She didn't recognize him and didn't know why he called her name. Through the trees, you could see he was tall with dark skin. He wore an old Western-style coat. What worried Tracey was the sawed-off shotgun in his left hand. "Bradley, Greg, follow the ridge and get back to the house fast. Don't worry about me. He won't catch me in the woods, and I won't let him get close enough to use that shotgun. Go. Use what I taught you." As the boys ran down the ridge, Tracey moved the other way. The man tried to follow but wasn't very good at it. He was in good shape but lacked the skills to catch her. She played with him until she was sure the boys reached home, then headed back to the cabin. The boys were smart and avoided danger. When she got to the clearing behind the buildings, she saw Tom splitting wood. He motioned her to go behind the cabin. He seemed very calm, considering the situation. Surely the boys told him about the man with the shotgun. She looked around but didn't see the boys anywhere. A moment later, the man came out of the woods looking taller than she thought. He walked straight to Tom, who kept splitting wood. "Where is she? Where is the woman who just ran through here?" Tom looked at the man and pointed at his left ear, showing he had a hearing problem. The man moved closer, still holding the shotgun. Tom stopped splitting wood and faced him. "I'm sorry? What did you say?" "I said, where is the woman who just ran through here?" The big man felt no threat from Tom, even though Tom held an axe. He didn't move as Tom walked up to him. "You mean that woman?" Tom pointed at Tracey with his left hand as he spoke. As the man looked at Tracey, the axe in Tom's right hand quickly knocked the shotgun away from the man. Tom hadn't moved his arm. The motion all came from his wrist. As the tall man bent down to hold his hurt fingers, the back of the axe hit him in the face again. Around that time, the sheriff drove up to the house. The boys ran out as Tracey walked towards the man who saved her. It was a crazy thing to do. What man in his right mind would face someone with a shotgun while only holding an axe? Tom, Tracey, and the boys sat on the porch as the police took care of everything. They had to call an ambulance for the big guy. He lost a few teeth and had a broken nose and hand, but he could still say that he was there to give Tracey McMann some legal papers. He thought the shotgun would scare her enough to do his job. The shotgun wasn't loaded. He had followed Todd Werner to the area and talked to the neighbors to find Tracey. They all sat quietly as the sheriff scolded Tom for using too much force. He decided not to charge Tom only because the man had the shotgun. However, he had many charges against the big man. The paper that was supposed to be given to Tracey had mysteriously disappeared. Soon, everyone was gone. Tom asked the boys to make lunch and then asked Tracey to tell him what was going on. Given the situation, she felt she couldn't say no. The grilled cheese sandwiches were ready just as she finished her story. She told Tom almost everything but left out the part that she was very rich. After lunch, Bradley and Greg went to the woods to play. Tom went out on the porch and Tracey brought coffee a few minutes later. I looked over your drawings this morning after you left. They're a bit different from what Anne did, maybe even better. Don't let it get to your head because the publisher has the final say." Tracey didn't say anything. She was happy that her drawings met Tom's approval. "If you can do 3 more, I can send a package on Monday. What do you think?" "Just tell me what you need and I'll have them for you by tomorrow evening." Far off, you could hear the boys playing in the mountains. Tracey hoped they wouldn't hurt themselves today. Later that afternoon, Tracey called Tanner to tell him about the morning trouble. He wasn't home, but Sarah, the woman who answered, was very interested. She asked specific questions and seemed to know what she was doing. Tracey couldn't help thinking that she was more than just a housekeeper. When the boys came back, they told their dad they were staying over at a friend's house. Bradley winked at Tracey as they left. Tom dropped them off and bought some shrimp on the way home. The kitchen table was covered with newspapers and piles of shrimp when Bradley and Greg returned the next morning. There were a few half-empty beer bottles beside several empties. It was clear that the special dinner was abandoned before it was finished. Tom's sons turned and left quietly, giggling on the porch before heading back to the mountains. Tracey woke up to the sound of the boys playing outside. Sunlight came through the side window. She thought she had a few minutes for a quick shower before the boys got back. Tom hadn't moved. His muscles were well developed. Who would have thought that an axe could give the same results as an expensive gym machine? Tracey found an old waffle iron on a high shelf. It was warmed up and ready when Bradley and Greg came back from their short exercise. She thought about how nice it was to be young and full of energy. Juice and syrup were on the table, and soon hot waffles were ready. Tom, freshly showered and smiling, appeared shortly after. He noticed Tracey wasn't as cheerful, so he toned it down a bit. After breakfast, Sarah Weiser showed up. The directions Tracey had given her seemed to work. "Tanner is in San Francisco, but he'll be back this afternoon. Can you both come over for a little supper? He's bringing fresh crabs from the wharf." "Good news or bad news?" "Can't wait until tonight, Tracey." "Did you find out anything about the guy from yesterday?" "He spilled everything. Tremble hired him and 3 other guys. There was a $5,000 bonus for the one who served you the papers. His trouble got worse because of the shotgun he carried. It wasn't exactly legal." "How did you find all this out?" "Tracey, I'm not only Tanner's guest, but also his personal lawyer. I showed my ID and told the local cops I was there to help your visitor. Heck, I didn't even know his name when I walked in, but nobody asked. I left after 10 minutes, and they never knew why I was really there." "You're Tanner's lawyer?" "I've been for 20 years. By the way, I'll have some papers for you to sign this evening." "You never told me what Tanner found out in San Francisco." "You're right. Tanner always said you were sharp." Tom and Tracey waved as Sarah walked back to her car. "Tracey, she never gave you an answer." "You noticed that too. You're getting smart since you met me." Tom spent the afternoon working on the Jeep, while Tracey finished the drawings that were still needed. She was glad he wasn't splitting wood. The boys were gone most of the time, so things stayed quiet. The biggest decision of the night was what kind of pizza to order and which pay-for-view movie to watch. Tracey watched with amusement as the 2 teenagers argued about it. Before heading to Tanner's house, Tom packed the manuscript and illustrations for the new book into a mailer. It was ready to be sent first thing in the morning. Now he needed to think of a way to thank his new assistant. The highlight of the evening at Uncle Tanner's was seeing Tom struggle with the boiled crabs. He watched how everyone else at the table handled them and then gave it a try with determination. In the end, he managed, and she found his approach to new situations quite entertaining. Tracey felt she had to tell Tom about the situation. Tom stayed through about half of the long conversation, then finally excused himself. He spent the rest of the evening on the porch, looking at the stars. Sarah brought him fresh coffee and a warm smile. He couldn't decide which was worse, the legal talk or the business talk. Sadly, Tracey had to sit through the whole thing. Uncle Tanner quickly understood the situation. There were a few options to fix it, and Tracey easily picked one. With the amount of company stock Tanner and Tracey held, Tanner could gain full control of the company right away. Sarah had the needed papers, and Tracey signed them without hesitation. She still had her annuity and the money she had saved. Giving up the stock wouldn't change her lifestyle, but would save the company. Tanner and Sarah were moving to San Francisco for a while. Tracey asked if she and Tom could stay at the lodge. Now she just needed to convince Tom that moving there was a good idea. Tom loved the cabin, but it had some sad memories for him. Maybe the change would help. She was sure Bradley and Greg would be thrilled about it. "Hey, wake up, sleepyhead." Tom had fallen asleep, even though the Adirondack chair was very uncomfortable. "Sorry, I guess we're ready to go, right?" "Right. I'm sorry for the boring evening." Tracey and Tom said their goodbyes and started back to the cabin. "Did everything go okay?" "Mostly. There's one small problem, and I need your help. I'm not sure how I can help, but I'm here for you. Tanner and Sarah are moving back to San Francisco for a while. They need someone to stay at the lodge. I told them we could do it." Tom didn't respond immediately. "I thought you were only staying until your problem was solved. Does this mean you'll stay longer?" "I will if you can help me. I can't manage the big place alone. I'm sure I can do it if you and the boys help. Will you do it?" The inside of the Jeep was dark, but she could see his smile from the headlights of passing cars. Her worry was for nothing. All she had to do now was wait for Uncle Tanner to move out. Bradley and Greg were still up when they got back. They hadn't seen the lodge, but were excited about moving. It meant Tracey would stay, and that was more important than a new house. Tom and Tracey excused themselves and went to bed. She saw the boys giving each other a high five. She didn't feel entirely comfortable just yet, but they no longer had to hide that they were a couple. Tracey got up before the boys and made breakfast. They asked 100 questions about the new house. They would each have their own bedroom and high-speed internet. What more could a boy want? Tom came out just as they left for school. He ignored Bradley's teasing wink. Tom left just before the post office opened. Tracey was surprised when the landline phone started ringing. It was rare for that phone to ring. "Hello, Henderson residents, can I help you?" It sounded old-fashioned, but she didn't know what else to say. There was silence on the other end. She was about to hang up when a quiet voice spoke. "This is Ann Henderson calling. Who are you?" This was the worst-case scenario. Of all the people who could have called, why did it have to be her? More importantly, why was she calling? Tracey's thoughts raced. It had to be one of two things. Either she needed money or she was coming back. The money part didn't bother Tracey. Ann's possible return did. "I'm the housekeeper. And who are you again?" Another pause, as if Ann was struggling to answer. "I'm Mrs. Henderson, Tom's wife." "Oh, I'm sorry. I thought Mr. Henderson was divorced. I wonder why he lied to me about that." "I don't think he really lied. I sent him divorce papers a few years ago, but they were from Nevada and not actually legal. We're still married." "Why would you send fake divorce papers?" "That wasn't my intention. I just didn't do it properly, so the divorce isn't valid." "Why would you do that?" The long pause showed she was having a hard time coming up with a good answer again. "I'm sorry, but that's none of your business. Can I speak to Tom?" "Oh, he's not here. He's at the tax office again. He spends a lot of time there lately." "Why is he at the tax office?" Tracey couldn't help but laugh quietly to herself. Tom was in trouble. He was behind on his taxes for 2 years, both state and federal. He hadn't paid property taxes for 3 years, state and county. His credit cards were maxed out, and he owed money to his publisher for a book he never finished. Jail time seemed likely. I can't believe it. Tom was always so reliable. What happened? You left him and everything fell apart. How could you ask such a silly question? There was silence. Tracey waited a moment. "Hello? Are you still there?" "Yes, I'm still here." "What did you want anyway? Maybe I can help?" "I have a small problem. I was hoping he could send me money for a plane ticket to come home." "Can't your boyfriend help you?" There was no answer. "What do you mean by home?" A short pause. "I don't want to talk to you anymore. I'll call back when Tom is there." The timing of the phone call was too coincidental, and it bothered her. Tracey waited on the porch for Tom to come back from town. She told him about the call from Ann. He didn't say anything. A few minutes later, Tom called the phone company and canceled the landline service. He unplugged the phone and threw it into the closet. He asked her not to mention the call to the boys. Then he went outside to split wood. Tracey felt frustrated. Just when she thought things were getting better, one phone call messed it all up. Why did Anne choose now to call? It only took her about 10 minutes to find the divorce papers in Tom's file cabinet. She knew she shouldn't be looking through his private things, but she felt this needed to be dealt with. 10 minutes later, she was on her way to see Sarah on her bike. Tom saw her leave but didn't try to stop her. She was gone less than an hour. When she got back, she stopped and looked at Tom from the porch before going inside. She was determined not to let Anne get him back. Tom stopped splitting wood when Tracey called him for lunch. The hot sandwich and beer seemed to calm him down. They didn't talk until the meal was over. "I need a new story to illustrate. You said you had several ready. Can you get one for me so I can start?" "Let me take a shower first, then I'll handle it. By the way, will we need firewood at the new place?" "The lodge has an oil furnace. We only need wood for the fireplace, not for heating." Tom paused for a moment and finished his beer. "I think I want to sell most of the wood behind the house. People have asked about it. I don't think I want to split wood ever again." Tracey watched as he walked towards the shower. Maybe the call from Anne wasn't a bad thing after all. 3 days later, things were going well. Tanner and Sarah went to San Francisco and were staying at Tracey's place until they found their own. Tom had sold all the firewood. The buyer even moved and stacked 2 loads at the lodge. Tom left all the furniture at the cabin since the lodge was fully furnished. The boys had to switch schools, but they didn't mind much. In less than a week, Tom had the cabin rented for a year. Tom's publisher was thrilled with his recent book and Tracey's illustrations. She couldn't finish the new pictures because of the move, but promised Tom she would have them done within a week. Tom was already working on a new book. Things were looking good. The next Saturday was for a road trip. They all headed to the city. Tanner said it was safe to return. The bike was on the trailer, so Tracey could return it to Tiny and settle things. Her other bike would come back with them. Tracey let Bradley drive the RX-7 back to the lodge, but only if she was in the passenger seat. Greg was upset about being left out, but she promised to make it up to him later. Tom and the boys were impressed by the condo. Tom realized there was more to Tracey than he thought. He was afraid to ask about it, though. The trip wasn't just for fun. While Tanner and Tracey talked business, Sarah took Tom and the boys to Japantown for lunch. They enjoyed picking sushi from the little boats floating by. Tom didn't enjoy it much because he worried about the prices. He relaxed when Sarah told him it was Tanner's treat. Uncle Tanner's sudden appearance at the company caused chaos. Darian Tremble was fired and escorted out by marshals. The rest of the group, except for Todd and Andrea, were given until the end of the day to clear their desks. Andrea had a list of replacements for Tanner to interview on Monday. Tracey was relieved that Andrea wasn't part of the trouble. Tanner also told Tracey that he and Sarah weren't coming back to Rough and Ready, and the lodge was now hers, free and clear. Sarah secretly handed Tracey a package. By 3 o'clock, the Henderson family and Tracey were ready to head back. Tracey prayed as Bradley pulled out with the car. Tom followed with the trailer. Tracey smiled at the situation and decided to give Bradley a break. She quickly called Tom and told him to meet them at the pit. "Okay, Bradley, go for it. If you get a ticket, you're paying." The car moved away from the Jeep so quietly you could barely hear it. She usually didn't let Bradley drive like this. But today she was in a good mood. Tracey let him drive the RX-7 fast until they were about 10 miles from Sacramento. By the time they got to the pit, Bradley was driving normally again. 20 minutes later, Tom and Greg arrived. Tom gave Tracey a small frown, but then smiled as they walked in for an early supper. The next 3 weeks felt like a dream. Tom's new book was going well, and Tracey was getting better at drawing. The boys' grades were improving with Tracey's help, and Bradley had his first serious girlfriend. Tracey also had time to practice parkour several times a week, sometimes alone and sometimes with Bradley and Greg. Tom no longer had to split wood. Then, on a Tuesday morning, she showed up. "Hi, my name is Ann Henderson. I understand Tom lives here now. I went to his old place first." She was about 5 feet 2 inches tall. Her hair was shoulder length and a messy blonde. She looked like she needed grooming and makeup. "Tom's not here right now, Mrs. Henderson. Can I help you with something? And who are you?" "I'm the housekeeper. I think we have spoken before." Tracey didn't invite her in. They stood on the porch waiting for the other to speak. "Will he be back soon?" He's in Sacramento. He'll be back after 3. Are the boys here? They're at school. They won't be home until 3:30. The pauses in their conversation were frustrating. Don't you want to tell me why you're here? I just want to get back with my family. I made a big mistake, and now I want to fix it. I need to talk to Tom. He'll understand. Why do you think that? We are still legally married. We are still a family. The boys need a mother, and Tom needs a wife. They needed a mother 2 years ago. Where were you then? Like I said, I made a mistake. I'm here now to fix things. You can't fix anything if you keep lying. Who are you to say I'm lying? You have no right. Tracey glared at her and went inside. She came back with an envelope Sarah had given her. Let's try this one more time, Mrs. Henderson. If you lie to me again, you'll be off this property so fast you won't know what happened. Anne stood still, not saying a word. What happened to the man you ran away with? Where is he now, and why aren't you with him? Anne tried to stand tall before answering. He was moved to Thailand and didn't take me with him. He left me in Baltimore with no money and no job. I didn't know what to do. So you decided to come back to the man you left and lie to him? I made a mistake when I left. He will take me back. He has to. Tracey pulled a document from the envelope. Do you see this report? It's from the Washoe County Courthouse in Nevada. It says your divorce from Tom Henderson is legal. You are no longer married to him. It's over. Do you understand? Anne hung her head. She nodded quietly. You lied about working in Baltimore too, didn't you? Anne just looked at Tracey, not saying anything. Tracey took out the paper showing Anne had been arrested for solicitation. She wanted to throw it in Anne's face but couldn't do it. She could see Anne was hurting and guessed she'd turn to that only as a last resort. Anne, do you want to talk about your arrest in Baltimore? Oh, God. Who are you? How do you know all this? Does Tom know? Tom doesn't know, and the boys don't know. As far as I'm concerned, they don't need to. What do you want? What am I supposed to do? Why did you leave your 2 sons? Leaving for another man is bad enough, but how could you just walk out on those boys? Daniel was charming and generous. I met him at an art store in Yuba City. Tom was usually busy, so it was easy for me to get away to spend time with Daniel. He told wonderful stories about his travels. He lived the kind of life I always wanted. I was stuck in a small house in the mountains with a quiet husband and 2 young boys. Looking back, I didn't know how lucky I was. When Daniel got transferred, he asked me to go with him, but alone. It was a very hard decision. The boys were closer to Tom than to me, so I left them with their father. I stayed with Daniel for 2 years until he was moved to Thailand. Our parting wasn't friendly. He told me he didn't want to take hamburger to a steak dinner. You messed up. Don't I know it? What about the arrest? I worked at a Taco Bell during the day but couldn't pay the rent. I got a second job at night cleaning at an Oriental massage parlor. One night they got raided. I was the cleaning lady and got charged with prostitution along with the others. That's when I called you. Anne, Tom does not want you back. Your sons feel the same way. Believe me, you do not want to face them. They know what you did and how you hurt their father. They love him and will stand by him no matter what you say or do. I don't care what you do. I'm just trying to make it easier for Tom and the kids. What can I do? Where can I go? I can help you out. I can give you some money to start fresh somewhere new. I won't tell Tom or the boys what happened. You can send them birthday cards and a Christmas present every year, but please don't visit. Why should I do what you say? Anne, listen carefully. Your husband is very angry about what you did and doesn't want to see you again. When you called last time, I told him, and he ripped the phone out of the wall. That's why I couldn't call him back. They stood quietly on the porch. Anne looked down and shuffled her feet. How much money? I'll give you $10,000 in cash and a ride to the bus station if you promise to stay away. You're a heartless person. Do you know that? Yes, I do. So do you want the ride or not? 2 hours later, Tracey watched as Tom drove up the driveway in a new Subaru Outback wagon. She grabbed a couple of cold beers while he parked in front of the lodge. What took so long? They put the wrong hitch on. I had to wait for them to fix it. Do you like it? They both sat on the porch rockers, feet up on the railing. Of course I do. What's not to like? He opened his beer and smiled at his benefactor. Your wife was here today. Is she coming back? Tom asked, taking a big sip of his beer. I don't think so. Good. The silence that followed felt like a sigh of relief. Tom, did you read the papers in that folder Sarah gave me? He finished his beer and crushed the can. Yes, I did. Tracey stood up and took the empty can from his hand. We have time for a quick shower before the boys get home from school. Want to join me? Tom smiled and took her hand as they walked into the lodge.
What's up, story lovers? This is the Story Guy, and if you're hungry for crazy tales and mind-blowing narratives, you've come to the right place. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button so you don't miss out on our weekly dose of crazy cheating stories, fun fiction and gut-ripping comedy from around the world. But that's not all. We also create our own original stories, and trust me, you won't find these anywhere else. Want even more spine-tingling reads? Head down to the description and grab our exclusive story collections. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.